Hey, what's up, guys? John here. Millennials have it harder in the economy and the real estate market than any other generation in history. I learned a very valuable lesson yesterday. I was at a park with my 2-year-old son. I was talking to a father that, his son was out there playing beside my son. I said, "So, what do you do for work?" And he is in the pawn shop business. And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me more about this." And this really made me really connect the dots on what's going on in the economy and the world. But this simple little conversation. So what he does is when someone comes in, they want to, sell their gold, or they need to get a loan out against this gold. What they'll do is they'll give them a certain percentage of the value of the gold and give them the money, and then they come back and they pay back the money plus a fee, right? I was like, okay, well, where do you get the money, right? Obviously, you guys might not be self-financing every single transaction. Where are you getting the money? He said private equity firms. Huh. And so, well, tell me more about this. What type of returns are these private equity firms getting with lending you money? He said, well, one private equity firm just lent us $1 million, and they're on track to make about $800,000 on $1 million investment, right? So when someone's going into a pawn shop and they're giving, their $5,000 chain in, or their watch, and they're getting, let's say $2,500, if they don't pay it back, the profits, they get split between the pawn shop and the private equity firm. The pawn shop and the private equity firm, it's not just that. In private equity investments, they're across every industry, whether it is insurance, whether it's food and distribution, whether it's pawn shops, whether it is small loans, payday loans, installment loans. They have their fingers and hands in everything, right? And it's kind of reminiscent of the early 1900s. Look at John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. These two titans basically changed the entire world, right? They leveled the middle class, they leveled everything, and just positioned everything for their favor, for their gain, whether it be stock market, manipulation, whatever it is. Now what we're having is a very similar thing, except it's not just John D. Rockefeller and Carnegie. No, it is private equity firms and large corporations. They are the new John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, right? And what's happening right now, if we just look at, for example, the GI, right, born 1901 to 1924, the benefits that they had, the growth in economic output per person, right, versus now millennials, so age 25 to 41, is their output's very low, right? Very low. And what we're seeing here also is when things really hit the fan a couple of years ago, who lost their jobs the most? The younger generation mainly lost their jobs at a much greater scale than any other generation, right? With the exception between 50 and 54, they lost their jobs. A very small age group, but 50 to 54. But here, the change in wealth since 1989, if you look at the younger generation, 35 to 44, and 25 to 34, and 45 to 54, the younger generation they have the greatest change to their wealth. And why? What's happening here? Well, we're seeing a couple of unique things. We're seeing now inflation through the roof, gas prices through the roof, jobs, everything's changing, right? But what we're also seeing is we're seeing these home buyers now stepping forward, and they're being forced to purchase properties at these hugely overvalued asset valuations, right? They're paying so much to get into a property because they're desperate to buy. They just have to get in, right? And so they were relocating from expensive cities, and they're like, okay, I'm paying $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month for rent. Might as well go buy something in Florida, or go here in Texas or Utah, or go wherever and buy. I need to own property, right? So what do? They end up overpaying for a property, and then insurance and everything is going up beside the housing payment. So everything in life is going up, and job opportunities are changing, right? What we're witnessing right now as a society is we are witnessing the end of basically the end of borders, right? Everything is going to be completely flat playing field, to where people are going to be hiring, large companies are going to be hiring overseas just as much as they're going to be hiring in America, right? So there's not going to be that financial incentive to stay in America that there was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. Because as we work from home and as we start moving into this direction of society, people are going to be competing for the same job compared to somebody in India or in Germany or in Canada or anywhere else in the world, right? And if we have a higher cost of living, then that is ultimately going to give the corporations more power and control over their budget and also over everyone else's lifestyle, right? So what I'm seeing happen here, this is a well-written article. This first part here I'm going to read to you. By virtue of sheer numbers, millennials are defining the trends of today's housing market. The age group now accounts for 43% of all home buyers. So far in 2022, according to a report by the National Association of Realtors, there are now more millennials, defined by the NAR as being born between 1980 and 1998, buying homes than any other generation, and their share of their home buying market is only growing, up 37% last year. Older millennials born before 1989 make up a larger share of new homeowners than younger members of their cohort. These older home buyers appear to have utilized opportunities afforded to them by the last 2 pandemic years to save up money and enter the housing market. Some young adults have used the pandemic to their financial advantage by paying down debt and cutting the cost of renting by moving in with family. They are now jumping head first into home ownership, right? But as millennials began to contemplate taking the leap into home ownership, they are also being confronted with one of the most expensive, competitive, and unforgiving housing markets in recent times. This is the most competitive housing market ever, right? Because home buyers and renters, they're all kind of pushed into a corner. Rents are through the roof, like $2,000, $2,002 is the median national rent right now in America. Like, that's crazy. $2,000 for a median rent. Think about what people, in the 50 to 60 to 45 age group, what their life was like 20 years ago. When they were just getting started, they had probably a basic job, like everyone, generally starts. They start with a basic job and try to grow and scale, right? When they were doing that, they might be making $2,000 a month, but their rent was $350 or $400, right? So they were only paying 20% of gross monthly income or 30% of gross monthly income on rent. When national rent is $2,000, that's probably 60% gross income, right? And then you add in all the other costs that are increasing with rent. So we looked at all these dynamics. We've really sucked in all this information. What are we left to understand? We're understanding right now that this is the biggest opportunity right now, because if we don't look at it this way, then we're walking into like a financial hell, right? Because the opportunity is, okay, there's a massive pool of wealth that's going to be changing hands over the next couple of years. What is the plan? What is the strategy? How can I supply the most value to the market? What financial moves can I make today to reduce my overall lifestyle, to bring my costs down, and to build out a large moat of safety for myself and my family? This trend is going to continue. These large corporations are going to be relentless. Private equity firms are going to be relentless. As interest rates increase, do you think they're borrowing money at 3% or 5%? No, they're borrowing it at 2%. They're borrowing it much less than everyone else, right? So you think about it this way. As interest rates rise and everything else increases, they have access to cheaper money to buy these properties. And there's going to be less people that can afford to buy them. So there's going to be more upward pressure on rents, allowing them to continue to increase rents, making things so much harder for everyday Americans, right? Pay attention to these trends. Millennials right now are getting screwed. Age 25 to 41, really just getting royally screwed with what's happening. They're entering this housing market at the biggest bubble, in my opinion. I think insurance prices are going to continue skyrocketing. Utility bills are going to continue to skyrocket. I read something that was like $28 billion in back due utility bills people can't afford. And as we step into the winter, utility bills are going to keep going up, and gas prices are going to keep going up. So I believe there's going to be huge opportunities to those that are aware of the trends that are happening right now. But you got to be very, very, very careful with all the current trends that are happening across the housing market. People were overpaying for properties, their first home, and they're soon going to be upside down on it. And then what are they going to do? They're either going to have to walk away from the property, or they're going to, try to hold on to the asset and see what happens, if they even have that option. But be very smart, be very strategic, come up with a really, really good game plan. And we just look at how fast society is changing. It's changing so quickly. Like my father's generation, people that were older, they just had it so much easier to build wealth. So much easier. But today, you can still make a ton of money. You just need, to incorporate technology into your business. Without tech being integrated into the business, it's going to be much harder to scale it to a large potential to where you could create enough value to then build out security, right? So what do you think about this entire situation, where we're headed? Drop your comments below, hit the like button, subscribe here, and also subscribe to my second YouTube channel. It's going to be an interactive show and a podcast starting next week. And LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything is in the banner. Go follow me over there, and I'll catch you guys next video.